Good afternoon, class. Welcome to Modular 5. Basically, at this point in the semester, we're at the fifth week. Um, most of you have already turned in the fiction essay, which was essay 1. That was due last Sunday. And I'm going through and I'm starting to grade some of those. I'm hoping to have a good bit of those graded by this time next week, if not sooner. So if you turn something in, just keep in mind you will have a grade on it. This particular week is the sort of the character perspective project, which instead of having just a sort of like a standardized fiction exam, which a couple weeks ago, if you looked up, you probably seen sort of the study guide and a sample version of that. Kind of changed some things up a little bit. To incite some creativity, I hope, instead of having the standard writing an essay, testing, back and forth type deal. So I try to go a little bit more with the everybody's creative nature. Hopefully everybody has some kind of creative nature to them, especially since we're reading short fiction here or finishing up short fiction. Um, Modular 6, which would be next week, week 6. That's going to start our poetry unit. We will have 5 weeks of poetry. You will have a respondus exam coming up with it's either going to relate to a essay prompt or it may be more or less like a standard poetry exam. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as it gets closer. That's going to happen during midterm week, which is about week 8, week 9. There's information in your syllabus about respondus. You're going to need to get a camera, get a web camera, a web mic. You need some sort of a student ID or driver's license will work. You're going to need to take the exam in a place that's going to be relatively quiet, especially if this is your first time taking online courses. All your online courses, you have to take at least one respondus event. Generally, that event is around midterm, or it could be the final exam, depending on the instructor in the class, of course. Usually, the time limit is set at 60 minutes. There's really nothing I can do about changing that time. So you will have 1 hour to complete it. You need to have your camera on at all times, your mic on at all times. I wouldn't have people running in and out of wherever your testing environment. You need to have stable internet connections. But I will give you some additional information about that as it gets closer. You probably have about 2 or 3 weeks. So you don't really necessarily have to fret about that now, but I just wanted to sort of give you some heads up about where we're going as it relates to that particular exam. You could also, if you don't have the best equipment, let's say you don't have a working mic or your internet, sort of cuts off depending on which way the wind is blowing on that particular day, you can go to your closest Coastal Pines Technical College testing center, which is usually the library. You can use the college's web mic. You can use the college's, internet, that type stuff. You're going to have to download the Respondus app, though. You definitely need that. That's free. There's information in Blackboard about how to go about doing that. But you will definitely need to download that to be able to take that particular exam, the Respondus exam. So going back to what's really due this Sunday, right? By 11:59. I'm going to switch over here. I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're going to look at this particular assignment. Because there's really no extra reading this week. It's just wrapping up anything. If you do need to go back and kind of reread or wrap up anything, this would be the week to sort of do it, depending on what story you're going to choose to sort of rewrite either a particular passage. And now that this could be, the beginning of the story, it could be somewhere in the middle, it could be the end. A lot of, especially last week's story with Carver's The Cathedral and Joyce's Araby, they have sort of what they call sometimes a zero ending, or it's sort of open-ended, where the reader, especially the protagonist, experiences some sort of a epiphany. And we will talk a little bit about what that word means, because it is a very, frequently used literary term. You probably have heard of it before prior to this course. So the text that we have covered over the last 5 weeks is Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour, Ernest Hemingway's A Clean, Well-Lighted Place, Alice Walker's Everyday Use, of course, Carver's Cathedral, and James Joyce's Araby. So you want to pick one of those, and then really decide what scene you want to sort of rewrite. And it needs to be something of substantial. I mean, don't pick like two short sentences and say, well, that's my 2 scenes. It needs to be something that's going to be that you can really sort of develop into something that would be, sort of worth reading or seeing an alternative viewpoint for that particular scene. The format, again, you're going to use the same MLA 9 format, 12 font, Times New Roman, double space. You can have a sort of like a title page with your name, the story's title, and the assignment title, that type deal. You want all that in one single document. Here's one way that you can save it, but you can save it pretty much any way you want, as long as you can kind of retrieve it and upload it that way. That's basically what I'm really caring about. Here's the overview, right? For this project, you will show your understanding of a story by rewriting a scene from a different character's point of view. So you're not using the protagonist per se. You're coming up with a different character that's already in the story. Of course, if you want to be a little bit more creative, you can kind of add maybe a character to the story. But you can't use the main character, meaning you can't use the main protagonist, because we already know the protagonist's perspective. We need to see either from a secondary perspective or possibly a new character. And you want to be careful with the new character, because if you really don't know how that particular character fits, it may be kind of problematic, because that new character wasn't really part of the original story, right? You will choose one of the stories we have read. Of course, I've already listed those above and talked about them. Pick a secondary character, someone vital to the story, but not the main focus, to tell a key scene from their point of view. This will show how well you understand the characters and how changing their perspective changes how we see the story. So here, what you would need to do first is 1, pick a scene from a story. Choose a scene from a story important to the plot or the character development. This could be a moment when something big happens, like a turning point or climax. So I'll give you an example here of The Lottery. You could choose the moment when Tess Hutchinson is selected. Right? There's a lot of different people in that crowd. In The Story of an Hour, again, this is just an example. You can choose when Miss Mallard hears about her husband's death, right? There was a couple other people in the room when that happens, including her husband, who just comes back in. If you want to focus toward the end, right? He comes back in the door and she has the heart attack or whatever the case may be. Or I think this is really coming from at the beginning, when her sister and their friend sort of tell Miss Mallard about the supposedly train accident. Okay, after you pick a scene and a character and a story, rewrite the scene from a different character's point of view. Pick a secondary character, someone who is not the main character, but still plays a significant role. Here, I'll give you a couple examples early on from The Lottery and The Story of the Hour. Think about, how does this character feel about what is happening? What does the character notice that the main character does not? What might they be thinking or feeling during the scene? And how would their perspective on the event differ from the main character? Rewrite the scene using the character's voice, emotions, and perspective. Stay true to the story. Although you are changing the perspective, your rewrite should still fit within the original story world and tone. And if you look, I gave a Model A example of a student who did this in the previous semester. So if you need to sort of look at something, how do I go about approaching it, you can kind of look at that particular example. The second part of the exam is you really need to write a reflection, right? 500 or 750 words. So if you look at that in pages, 500 words, if you double space, it'd be about 2 pages. 750 words, if you double space, would be about 3. So I'm just looking for something about 2 or 3 pages as it relates to your reflection. And basically what you're doing there is, along with your scene rewrite, you will write a brief explanation of your choices. So why did you choose this character and scene? How does seeing the event from the character's perspective change how we understand the scene or the overall story? What new things do we learn about the character or the original scene by viewing it through the character's eyes? So in a nutshell, that's it. That's all that the first exam is sort of going to be. I hope it's a little bit more creative. I'm hoping it's a little bit less stressful. It's fun in a way that you're not having to study, 6 or 7 texts all at once. You can kind of pick and choose which text that you really like the most and go about creating a really good rewrite of the scene. So let me pull up here momentarily what yours should look like, and I will share this. And I provide some suggestions and comments, of course, in the margins of this rewrite of the example. So as you can see here, basically I just set it up sort of like a regular essay. I know it said something about a title page. You can have that if you want. To me, MLA doesn't really like the title pages like APA. They see it as part of a waste of space as it relates to a title page for MLA. So you can do the same header. Now, again, some folks are still losing very easy points on the weekly assignments and on the essays about not following the MLA 9 format. I mean, first name, last name, my name, the title of the course, English 1102, and then the date. And I would put the date that the thing is due. Your last name and page number. Some folks just have their last name. Some folks just have their page number. Some folks don't have any of this. So you're losing points when it comes to the formatting section or criteria of that particular rubric. And I will get a rubric uploaded here directly, or at least as it gets closer to the point where I'm starting to grade these, you will know I will send out a rubric about them. You need to have a title, and it needs to be centered. In this case, this person wants to do James Joyce Araby, right? Character perspective project. Here, this person actually used sort of like Roman numerals. They sectioned out the part. You can do that. Sometimes that makes it easier, not only for me to read and grade, but also for you to write. As you can tell, it has the chosen scene. We have this person that talks, 2 sentences about the chosen scene. Then we get into the chosen perspective, right? Deals with the character here. Again, it's very brief. There's roughly about 2 sentences in one. There's about 2 sentences in two. And then we get into the rewritten scene. And we're looking from Megan's sister's perspective. Now here, during the rewritten part of the project, you can use contractions. because in the original story, I'm sure there was contractions used. It's when you get to the reflection part where it's a little bit more scholarly and academic. You want to use formal essay rules for that. But for your scene, you can use the contractions. You can use cliches, that type deal, because that's where you're becoming creative. And if you look, if you want a sort of a word count, maybe for your scene, and you can add dialogue. This is a little bit more or less prose writing, but you can add that dialogue if you want. Um, that's about 350 words. So if you want a ballpark um, figure about how long your scene should be, I would try to keep it maybe between 350 and maybe 400, something of that nature, just so there's enough there that you can write about. And again, double space will make the thing look neater and nicer. So if you just sort of lifted this out and put on its own document, it would probably be about a page, maybe a page and a half. Then we get to the reflection, which comes right after your scene. And again, if you look over here, I've pretty much put stuff, suggestions, comments, stuff that works well, stuff that doesn't work well. I may provide some questions there that, you can ask yourself. In this case, for this particular student, extra questions to ask as they, next time, maybe if they had to do another one of these, this is what they, would remember to sort of put in there. And then we get this reflection, why you chose or why that particular person chose the scene and that particular character, and then go through how the new perspective changes the story. And then I give the works cited, since you're only using the one story, that's all you would need. And then I give some feedback. Now, be careful about the works cited. I'm seeing this too. If you're only using one work, your works cited title needs to be centered regardless. But if you're only using one work, it needs to be work. If you're using two or more, then you put the S works. Some of you are putting stuff on your works cited page that I'm not even seeing where you are paraphrasing it or quoting it throughout the body of essay one. Generally, the only items that need to go on your works cited page are the actual stuff that you quoted from, paraphrased, or summarized, meaning there's parenthetical or in-text citation throughout the body of your essay. If you don't have any quotes, if you don't have any in-text citations from that particular source that you're using, you do not want to put stuff on that works cited page. Because otherwise, when you upload it to SafeAssign, it's going to flag it out of the water for plagiarism. And usually that's a big red sign for instructors, especially if, you have a 3-page paper and there's about 10 sources to it and you only use 2 of those sources. So are you sort of, copying and pasting stuff off of websites? Are you using certain AI programs to sort of blend those sources in there and the AI doesn't really know how to properly cite it correctly? Just be mindful of that stuff because you don't want to get flagged, especially with something like this, because this is really it's a test, but it's a creative way to test your knowledge of a particular story and show your creativity as it relates to picking a character that's secondary to that story. And again, if you look at the feedback, this is really good feedback. This person made a 97 on it, really good. This will help your grade if you do really well on it. And just, look at, obviously you want to go back and double check, spell check, proofread, edit. Sometimes you are losing points for not proofreading and editing your paper, right? Learning how to fix a comma splice or a run-on or a misplaced or squinting modifier, passive versus active voice, topic sentences, concluding sentences, not using paragraph breaks, not indenting paragraphs, don't have hook, don't have a really nice, neat hook in an introduction paragraph. Your thesis statement is non-existent. Not double spacing, you're single spacing everything, which that's just going to make your life a lot more difficult because it's going to seem like you're going to have to write more if you single space. Turning stuff in as PDF files. I've been talking about that the last 4 or 5 weeks. You're free to do that. The problem with PDF files, I can't really mark, like I said before, and I usually put that in my comments directed to that particular student. If you want feedback, I can't necessarily provide feedback on the actual file because it's in PDF file. Only thing I can do with the PDF is read it and give it a grade. If you want feedback, comments, suggestions, that type stuff, then you need to upload it as a Microsoft Word file so I can do this type of stuff over here in the margins. If you don't really care about the feedback, then I would just read it and give it a grade. Trying to think of some other stuff that's going on that I'm seeing. Make sure that you follow deadlines, right? When something is due, unless I tell you otherwise, either email or, announcement page or whatever the case may be, that's when it's due. So I have several people that didn't turn in the SA1, and now they're emailing me 3 or 4 days later wanting to know if I can reopen it. And really, the policy says I don't take late work. So the zero is going to hurt if you start racking up zeros. So please follow deadlines. Like this one is due on the 16th, which is this Sunday. You knew that there was going to be an exam coming up. This exam has been up, at least this version of the exam has been up for at least a week, almost 2 weeks now. Just like the SA1. The SA1, I believe I started putting topics up about SA1 either week 1 or week 2 of the semester. So it's not like I'm throwing this stuff up 2 days before it's due. Y'all had weeks to do a lot of this stuff. Now, some of y'all are sending me drafts of the fiction essay. Usually drafts will improve your grade and help your grade because then I can go ahead, especially if you send me drafts, days ahead of time before something is due. I mean, don't wait until Sunday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and send me a draft if it's due later that night, because chances are I'm not going to get to it. Or if I do, you're not going to have enough time to really dissect it and really understand it and go through it and make the changes. But if you want to, anything that we do written wise, if you want me to look at a draft, I don't mind. You're just going to have to send it as a Word document to my email account. And I would say at least give me 2 or 3 days to really look at it. We also have tutor.com. You can utilize them. They're free. I would say maybe utilize both. That way you have 2 sets of eyes looking at your work, and you would get 2 sets of feedback where you can kind of sort of gauge, kind of compare and contrast where to really fix and focus on. In the past, those that have used tutor.com, those that have sent me drafts multiple times throughout the semester usually get the higher grade, not only on that particular assignment, but overall, they get the higher grade in the class. Sometimes it's a difference between a B and an A, or a C and a B, or a D and a C at that point. Again, it's optional. You don't have to do it. But if you're worried about your grade and you want a certain, certain GPA or whatever the case may be you're trying to achieve or strive for, then you need to sort of take advantage of some of this free resources that we have to offer. And please, like I said, follow deadlines, follow the assignment directions. A lot of times students are just losing points for really careless stuff. They don't read the entire instructions. Essay 1, you really needed to include textual evidence from your story, quotations, to back up your thesis, to back up your topics, and to back up your main claims. I'm getting papers that are 4 pages long, and there's only 1 or 2 quotations from a particular story. That's not going to help your purpose. Because I can guarantee if you're not using a good bit of quotes to support your ideas, then you're just rehashing the story out and giving me a poor version, synthesized version of lit charts or cliff notes or spark notes or monarch notes or whatever kind of notes that are out there You're just giving me plot summary of that story. I've already read the story multiple times. I know what happens. I'm not interested in hearing your Cliff Note version of the story. I'm interested in hearing your analysis of the story. How does your thesis statement fit with the rest of your paper? That's where you need to bring in quotations from the story. And when you don't do that, you're not really interacting with the test or with the text per se. So you're going to be losing points when it comes to MLA, sort of formatting and using quotations, because if I also had, several people that sent in 3-page papers with no quotes. That's not an essay. That's not addressing what those topics or those instructions say. So please, with this first exam, read the instructions. Look at the example, because again, just like with the sample exam from the student, I had a example model A essay 1. That person that I uploaded made an A on that paper. There was feedback. There was quotations in that particular model. If you looked at that model, you would have had sort of an idea of how to approach yours. I'm thinking a lot of students, because I didn't see a lot of drafts from everybody. There was a handful, and again, those that did send me drafts are generally getting the better grades now. It looks like some of these drafts were written hastily, right, in a rush. It looks like they could have been written hours before they were due, right? I did realize, and I said this before, I knew that it was Super Bowl Sunday, but I also had the Dropbox open way before Super Bowl Sunday, so you could always send me a draft, fix it, and still turn it in. But it looked like some folks were possibly writing this paper while they were watching the Super Bowl, just to how some of it was, coming across, because it's lacking in a lot of areas. And when you lack in a lot of areas, I can't give people full credit if they're not following instructions, right? I've had some folks where it said 3 to 6 pages, right? They only gave me 2 pages. Well, that's not 3 to 6 pages. That's not a full, complete essay. So you're going to be losing points if you're short. You see that there was a rubric there. There was a rubric in the modular. There was also a rubric in the Dropbox. I'm following that rubric. And you had a chance to look at that before turning it in as a checkpoint. So if you don't get the grade that you think that you should get, you probably need to go back and check to see, did you, 1, read instructions, 2, really give me what I needed for that particular paper, and 3, did you use the rubric as a checklist? And 4, if you didn't send me or tutor.com a draft and your paper is littered with a lot of spelling and grammatical errors, then you're going to lose a lot of points in that area. So again, stuff that you should have learned in 1101 is going to come back to haunt you for this class if you didn't take it seriously or if you didn't learn it in 1101. And at the same point, I don't have time to go back and rehatch and reteach 15 weeks of 1101 if you don't remember it. So, if you're having issues with grammar, if you're having issues about quotations and stuff, then you need to go, get on with tutor.com. You need to go to in-person tutoring meeting with one of us at the campus. You're going to need to do something because you're going to have to quote. You're going to have to write longer essays as we move along. I mean, that stuff's just not going to go away. The other thing is, keep in mind, when you're writing about literature, doesn't matter whether it's fiction, drama, poetry, you need to keep your verb tense in what they call historical literary present tense. That means characters never die. Authors die, characters don't die. So when you're referring to D in everyday use, everything needs to be referred or used the present tense, because D, yes, she is a fictional character, but she still lives in the book that's going to outlive us. So the verb tense needs to stay in historical literary present tense. If you're talking about Walker, Walker's still alive. But if you were talking about Shakespeare or somebody that's already dead, then you can kind of refer to them um, because they're the author in past tense. Okay, trying to think if there's anything else. Because again, this was going to be kind of a shorter video. Last week, I didn't even get a chance to do a video just because there was a lot going on. I had essays in, 3 of my 1101 courses coming in as well, just like the essay coming in here in 1102. I'm assumed everybody did well with the readings from last week because nobody emailed me about them or nothing like that. Of course, there's a lot of good information on your weekly or modular sections. There's videos and that type stuff that could always be used as supplement material in case I can't give a weekly lecture. So I hope everybody had a great last week. I hope everybody has a good this week, the remaining part of it. I hope exam 1 goes well. I hope your fiction essay goes well for the ones, once I get the rest of them graded. And we can sort of get ready to move on to modular 6, which is poetry. I believe modular 6 is probably already open. So if you wanted to go ahead and sort of look ahead, maybe get done with some of the readings and that type of stuff. If you feel confident and you feel okay about where you are with the first exam, then I would go ahead and sort of get ahead of stuff. Be careful about getting too ahead, because sometimes if you are not understanding something and there's assignments due and you're turning stuff in anyway, well, I mean, if you already get a grade on it and you didn't know what was going on, you probably need to slow down a little bit. So you can get the material, you get the stuff that you need to be successful. Otherwise, if you feel sort of confident about moving ahead, you can, at least with the reading aspect of it. I don't see that there should be too much issue about getting ahead with the reading, especially if you got other courses and work and other things going on. I would definitely maybe take advantage of getting ahead on the reading. Otherwise, next week I probably have some more information as it relates to our poetry week, poetry unit. Again, if you want, you can kind of send me drafts of this essay 1 before it is due. Generally, my schedule is Monday through Thursday, 7:30 to 6. I generally have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. I will, look at emails periodically over the weekends, like you. I got a life, I got a wife, I got kids, I got other stuff that I try to do outside of work as well. But, if you send something before it gets too late or it gets closer to the due date, I would try to look at it and get it back to you. Generally, if you get it back, if you give me something before 6 o'clock on Thursday, you should get it back depending on what's going on. If I have other papers and stuff that I'm reading, I usually go first come, first serve when it deals with drafts. But in the process too, I'm trying to get grades up to date and finalized as it relates to 1 week to the next. Which brings me to mind real quick. The college needed a first grade checkpoint. So I went ahead and I graded pretty much everything up to the first essay. Whatever your grade was, that's the grade that I sent to the college. It's really an unofficial checkpoint. If you're failing the class, you're probably going to get a call from either if you're doing enrollment, high school coordinator, or your advisor, or somebody from the college asking why do you got a D or lower. If you're passing C or higher, you're probably not going to get a call at all. The next grade point, the second grade point, will come around midterm, and that's the one that everybody probably needs to worry about a little bit more than maybe the first one. If you're, you've got a D or lower, by the time we get to week 8, week 9, you probably want to do some soul searching and figure out, do I want to stay the next 7 weeks and hope that I could pull my grade up to at least a 70 or higher? or should I just go ahead and withdraw from this class and take either the 10-week version in the summer or come back and take a full 15-week version again, either in person this time, because sometimes it could be the whole difference of in person versus online. A lot of folks take online courses thinking they're easier, and they're really not, because you do about the same amount of work. It's just there's a different environment involved. Because we do offer this class yearly. Spring and fall are usually 15 weeks. We do have in person, we do have online. Summer classes are always going to be about 10 weeks long, and they're actually talking about going back to an 8-week summer. So the deal about summer classes, when they're 10 weeks long, it's like doing 2 weeks worth of work in 1 week. So it's compressed time. In-person classes are a little bit longer. Sometimes they meet more often than just 2 days a week too, depending on the course. But I just want to sort of throw that out there at you. If you don't think you're going to be able to pull your grade up from a higher than a 70 as we get closer to the week 8 and week 9, then you may want to think about withdrawing. Now, if you want to withdraw, not that I'm encouraging it, but it's better than taking a WF is better than taking an F because it won't impact the grade point average as much. But you're going to have to go through that process. I can't withdraw you just because you send me an email and say, hey, can you withdraw me in the class? I can't do it. You're going to have to go either through the register. If you're dual enrollment, a high school student, you're going to have to talk to your high school coordinator to get in contact with the college. There's a, piece of paper and stuff that you have to do on your end. You got to fill it out on your end first. And once you do everything proper on your end, then I get the email and the message, hey, student X needs to drop. Then I can go in and do my side of it. But you have to do your part first before I can do mine. And if you don't do your part and thinking that I'm going to withdraw you just because you emailed me and said withdraw, that's not how it works. So I've had students, well, we're true for your class. Did you fill out the paperwork? No. That's the reason why you got the F instead of the WF, because you didn't go through the proper chain of command and channels to do it. Sorry, but I mean, it was all written there. We talked about it. There's just some things that the student now, being that they're considered an adult in college, have to start doing. And this is nothing new. You would do this at Armstrong, you would do this at Emory, you would do this at Cambridge, University of London, whatever the case may be. You're going to have to be able to take that control and decide, do you want to stay in the class or withdraw from the class? And if you need to withdraw, this is the proper way you need to go about doing it. All right, I'm going to end it there. I will see everybody, talk to everybody next week. If I don't see any drafts or get any emails from anybody, I'm just going to assume that everybody knows what they're doing with exam 1. And I look forward to reading everybody's rewrite and seeing everybody's reflection after this Sunday, if not earlier, because I know some folks have already turned stuff in. All right, have a good one. Be safe.